everyone, Comic Reviewer here, and this time reviewing on the first issue of The Simpsons comics. Now, as you know, almost a year ago, I did review the final issue of The Simpsons that was meant to portray as a tribute and a reference to the first issue that started it all. And here I got this off eBay. Now, the cover has Homer coming out the ground, with the Simpsons going all Fantastic Four on them. And the story starts off how Homer's like, "Well boy, how big am I?" And he points out that, Bart points out that Homer's gained 263 pounds, and Marge shows up saying, "Here's some nice fluffy tails, right out of the dryer. Bart, what are you doing?" "I'm reading the scale for Homer. He can't be past his belly." And he points out that, Marge points out that Homer's been snacking again, and even points out about eating some other foods, one of which was meant to be for Patty and Selma's big sort of event. And Marge says, "Remember now, only one donut today." "Puh, I promise." And Homer tries to think about not eating too many donuts, and the clouds start forming into multiple ones, with Homer going, "Go!" So meanwhile, Mr. Burns is in his office and has difficulty opening something, which is a band of paper clips, which he suggests getting the more easy opening kind, but Smithers points out that it is the easy opening kind. And what's interesting is that Burns admits that he misses the old days of his youth and has been working on a project to try and make himself young again. And what's interesting is that, Dr. Omerman from the final issue also appeared in this issue, with Burns saying, Dr. Omerman, how does the research?" Construction is complete, sir. Behold, the regenerator way." And Burns pretty much is willing to go through with it without doing any protesting, and Smithers is like, "Remember Project Q, sir? Very well. Proceed with the testing." And I like how we go on the site, it's got danger, extreme radiation hazard, so implying something bad happened. So we see them going through which worker to use, and they decide to use Homer, with Homer having difficulty eating just one donut, but gulping them all down, and Burns is going, "I've seen enough. Prepare the ray." And Dr. Omerman fires it, and nothing happens, but pretty much Burns decides to continue the research. And what's interesting is that at the Simpsons house the next day, that Homer has difficulty in his pants, and Homer's like, "Blast it, soft sipper, why don't you ever..." And Marge points out that they are new, and that she hadn't really washed them or anything. So what's interesting is that as soon as Marge comes back with some new pants, Marge is like, "Homie, I'm back with your new pants, Homer. Oh my god!" And what's interesting is Kent Bortman reports the news, and even gets a full cover of the story. And what's interesting is that at the, downtown Springfield area, one of the guys who owns the store where Homer got his pants saying, "If you ever yell another policy to those Simpson workers, you're fired." And what's interesting is Burns actually takes joy of this and imagines himself as the big giant and having countries named after himself. So what's interesting is that Marge basically tries to go after Homer with no ways of trying to talk to him due to him being so big. And Homer ends up getting his foot stomped, head banged, and electrocuted. And Marge is saying, "Oh, homie." So what's interesting is that Mayor Quimby introduces Troy McClure, and even has his name pretty much put in cement until Homer squashes it. And Quimby's like, "Get that big punk's name. Nobody ties a fit Diamond Joe Quimby for cement overload and get away with it. And what's interesting is that news of it comes all over the place, at Moe's Tavern, at the Quickie Mart, and even Mrs. Kabobble sees this after getting a headache and says, Bart, I apologise, you may go now. And what's interesting is that as soon as the police are at the donut place, even the police see how Homer goes for a giant-sized donut, and even, like, they even have, such as, Dr. Hibbert and Marvin Rowe having their own talks about this. And what's interesting, the news tries to get on Lisa about it. And what's interesting is that Marge has been pretty exhausted, and Bart even had Lionel Hutz to try and get some sweet on the action, but Marge pretty much finds out what he's after and lets him go. And what's interesting is that it's even revealed that the king-sized Homer is going to rampage to basically the nuclear power plant, and Wiggums is like, yeah, if he crashes that place, it's goodbye Springfield. Hello, slow, agonizing death by radiation poisoning. And what's interesting, Marge shows up to try and talk with them, and even finds a different solution. And even Dr. Ommerman knows a way to stop this after Burns suggests that he wants him alive. And what's interesting is that, much like Godzilla, they get into some trucks. And as Homer pretty much rampages through Springfield, he stops at where the nuclear power plant is and sees the Duff trucks, much like Godzilla with the fish. And Homer's like, beer. And as soon as Dr. Omen gets a shot, he ends up hitting Homer down, and Homer returns back to normal, much to the joy of his family, and they even run some tests on him to see if he's alright. And after this, Homer turns out alright, and has already lost 3 pounds. So after this, Burns pretty much still wants to continue the experiment, and what's interesting is that even Burns says, in the meantime, beef up security around here. I have the strangest feeling I'm being watched. And yeah, this is the story. So, what I think of the first issue, it feels like a bit like a Halloween special, but at the same time, feels like a good idea for an opening story. And what's interesting is that, yeah, years later, they actually did a final issue as a reference to this comic. It deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.